Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into one of the biggest economic disasters in modern history. It's a wild story about the false boom after World War I, a total global collapse, and the very small group of powerful men who were pulling all the strings. This quote really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? We're talking about four guys who, for a time, held more economic sway than any president or prime minister. And yet today, chances are, you've never even heard of them. So let's find out. We're going to peel back the layers on this story, uncover who these central bankers were, the secret calls they made, the one big idea that blinded them, and how they basically built a global house of cards that all came tumbling down in 1929. Okay, to really get a handle on their power, you have to picture the world right after World War I. I mean, it was shattered. Empires were gone, governments were broke, and global finance was just total chaos. And into that power vacuum, a new kind of authority stepped in. And this new power, it was basically concentrated in the hands of these four men. In London, you had the super eccentric and secretive Montague Norman. In New York, the powerhouse Benjamin Strong, who really ran the show at the new Federal Reserve. In Germany, the fiercely ambitious Hilmar Schacht. And in France, Émile Moreau, this career civil servant who was suddenly at the center of everything. They became, for all intents and purposes, the secret rulers of the world economy. And just look at the world they lived in. I mean, secret meetings on private islands, doing business on luxury ocean liners, setting up shop at the Ritz in Paris. This was not a world of public debate or accountability. It was a private club, and from inside its bubble, they were making decisions that would change the lives of millions. So you have these four incredibly powerful men from different countries. What was the one idea that united them? Well, it was a single ideology they held with an almost religious faith, and it would turn out to be their greatest, most fatal flaw. That idea was the gold standard. For these guys, this wasn't just some dry economic policy. No, it was an article of faith. They truly believed it was a gift from on high, the only real anchor for economic stability, the only way to get back to that orderly pre-war world they missed so much. And this right here, this is the core conflict of the entire story. They believed gold was this magical totem of stability. But the reality? The post-war world was completely different, and the gold standard had become a rigid, deflationary straitjacket. It shackled entire economies. As the brilliant economist John Maynard Keynes, who's kind of the ignored prophet in our story, called it was a barbarous relic. So they're armed with this rigid, outdated ideology. How did their actual policies during the so-called Roaring Twenties pave the road to absolute disaster? Well, every major decision they made trying to restore that old world actually just made the new one more and more unstable. You had the impossible war reparations forced on Germany, creating this toxic loop of debt. You had Britain going back on the gold standard at a totally unrealistic price, which just suffocated its own industries. And in America, a well-meaning attempt to help Europe with low interest rates ended up just pumping a colossal stock market bubble. And the whole time, Keynes was practically shouting from the rooftops. He warned them. He said that forcing Britain back onto gold at that price would mean they'd have to deliberately create more unemployment. He saw that their cure was actually poison. But in their exclusive little club, he was just written off as some crazy academic. So by 1929, this global financial system they'd patched together was stretched so tight it was about to snap. All it needed was one good shock to bring the whole thing crashing down. And you want to talk about famous last words? Get a load of this. This is a quote from a celebrated Yale economist, Irving Fisher, just days before the collapse. It just perfectly sums up the blind optimism of the time. This feeling that the party, fueled by nothing but cheap credit and speculation, could just go on forever. And then, it happened. The music stopped. On Black Thursday, the bubble didn't just leak, it burst. And the entire fragile structure they had built just disintegrated. The crash on Wall Street? That was just the opening act. It set off a chain reaction, a catastrophic global downturn. In just 1 year, industrial production absolutely plummeted everywhere, wiping out jobs and closing factories from Detroit to Dusseldorf. And these weren't just abstract numbers. The financial collapse had a devastating, real-world human cost. It sparked bank runs all over the globe. People's life savings just vanished. Normal life ground to a halt. People were literally resorting to barter, trading a dress for herring. You had churches taking IOUs in the collection plate because nobody had any cash. So this all leads to the big question, the really crucial one. Why? Why did these brilliant, powerful men fail so completely, so spectacularly? It really all came down to one thing, their blind devotion to the gold standard. Their playbook for a crisis was completely backward. As the world burned and gold started leaving their countries, the rules said they had to raise interest rates. Think about that. Their economies were starving for cash, and their solution was to make money even more expensive. They deliberately chose to make the depression deeper and longer. And that's the real tragedy of this whole story. These men weren't stupid. Far from it. Theirs was a failure of imagination. They were so trapped by the ideas of the past, so devoted to that barbarous relic, that they couldn't see the new reality, even as it was destroying the world right in front of their eyes. And so, the story of the Lords of Finance leaves us with this huge, timeless question. What they learned, far too late, is that when markets become, as they put it, unthinkingly fearful, sometimes that invisible hand needs a very visible, very steady guiding head. It's a powerful lesson about what happens when leadership fails.